You take the position because you have no better option and no worse enemy than poverty. The appointment arrives through a chain of minor courtly connections so thin it barely qualifies as networking. A clerk who knows a chamberlain, who needs someone literate, organized, and disposable enough that if something goes wrong in the Red Keep, the blame lands somewhere soft before it reaches anyone important. You have two qualities that matter in King's Landing. You can read, and you have no family powerful enough to make your removal complicated. You arrive at the Red Keep on a morning that smells like salt air and ambition. The castle is nothing like the stories. Bigger, louder. The architecture is designed to make you feel irrelevant. Which is the point. Power in Westeros doesn't just live in laws and armies, it lives in ceilings. The higher the ceiling, the clearer the message. You are small. The institution is permanent. Behave accordingly. Your predecessor left no notes. You find out later he didn't leave voluntarily. The steward's role under Joffrey Baratheon is essentially this. You manage the daily operational requirements of a teenage king with the temperament of a wounded animal and the authority of a god. Schedules, meals, correspondence, servants, ceremonial arrangements, and the 1,000 invisible administrative threads that keep a royal household from collapsing into chaos on any given morning. None of that is the hard part. The hard part is Joffrey. You meet him on your 3rd day. He's younger than you expected, and exactly as dangerous as everything you've heard. There's something behind his eyes that isn't cruelty exactly. Cruelty implies effort. What Joffrey has is something colder, indifference to consequence, dressed up as authority. He looks at people the way a bored child looks at insects. Not with hatred, with the quiet curiosity of someone who has never been told the insect has a perspective worth considering. He looks at you for approximately 4 seconds, then he looks away. You understand immediately that invisibility is your only protection in this role. The stewards Joffrey notices are the ones who end up as examples. You build your routines fast. Morning briefings delivered quietly, so nothing reaches Joffrey requiring his attention before he's had wine and whatever passes for his good humor. Meal schedules coordinated with enough redundancy that if he changes his mind 3 times, which he does, there's always something ready. Correspondence filtered before it reaches him, because Joffrey reading bad news unmediated is a structural problem for everyone in the room. The staff are terrified, not healthy professional wariness, genuine terror, the kind that makes experienced servants move through corridors like they're navigating unexploded ordnance. You learn their rhythms fast because their rhythms are your survival manual. The kitchen staff always keep a secondary meal ready. Chamber servants rotate duties so no single person is alone with him too long. The guards have almost imperceptible signals warning each other when his mood shifts. You absorb everything and add your own layer. You create buffers. Every request from Joffrey passes through you before reaching anyone, giving you 30 seconds to assess whether executing the request creates a problem larger than refusing it would. Most of the time you execute. Once you quietly rerouted an order that would have resulted in a servant's death over a spilled goblet by telling Joffrey the servant had already been dismissed, which was true by the time anyone checked. That costs you a week's sleep and permanent anxiety about contradictions. Nobody contradicts it. Cersei notices you within your 1st month, not because you've done anything remarkable, but because she notices everyone who gets close to her son. She asks you 3 questions in a hallway one morning. How long have you served? Whether you have family in the city? Whether you find your position satisfying? The right answers are short, honest about the first, vague about the second, carefully enthusiastic about the third. You give exactly those answers. She holds your gaze a moment longer than comfortable. Then she moves on. You've just been cataloged. Whether that's protection or surveillance, you won't know until it matters. Varys you never see watching you directly, which means he's watching you constantly. The tourneys are the worst operationally. Joffrey loves them with the enthusiasm of someone who has never personally risked anything and won. The coordination required is extraordinary. Guest accommodations, stable management, kitchen scaling, seating hierarchies, security rotations. You work 18-hour days during tourney weeks and sleep so little. The Red Keep starts feeling like a fever dream with better architecture. Sansa Stark arrives at court and becomes the most visible victim of a system you help maintain. You see her at official functions performing composure with the discipline of someone who has learned that visible distress creates worse outcomes than invisible suffering. You recognize the performance because you're giving the same one on a different stage. You cannot help her. That's the coldest truth of your position. You have no authority over royal decisions. No political standing, no family backing, no leverage that doesn't end with you joining the list of people who disappeared for caring too openly. You do small things, arrange for her meals to arrive reliably, ensure her chambers are maintained properly. These are invisible kindnesses that accomplish almost nothing and cost nothing visible. The only kind of kindness your position allows. Ned Stark's arrest shakes the household along loyalty lines you didn't know existed. Certain servants disappear overnight. You update the duty rosters to cover absences and say nothing about the reason. His execution you hear from a distance. The sound of a crowd reacting to something irreversible carries a specific acoustic quality. You're reviewing wine inventories because the household still needs wine regardless of what's happening on the steps of the Sept of Baelor. You keep writing. Stopping feels like admitting that what you're part of has a moral weight you cannot carry while still doing your job. You keep doing your job. Blackwater arrives like a season changing. The night of the battle you spend running supply and communication logistics for the castle's internal operations, while fire happens on the water and at the gates. The smell of wildfire is something nobody ever described accurately. It smells like the end of a normal life. Green-tinged and chemical, and completely wrong. Joffrey retreats from the battlements during the fighting. You don't record that. Some things you know better than to write down. The battle ends. Tywin Lannister arrives, and the entire atmosphere of the Red Keep changes within 24 hours. Colder, more efficient, less theatrical. Working under Tywin's shadow means structure so rigid that existing inside it feels like living in a very expensive trap. The household runs better. The consequences for failure are less random, and therefore somehow more frightening. Joffrey gets worse as his wedding approaches. You manage the preparations with the focused desperation of someone who understands that every detail must be perfect because the consequences of imperfection in Joffrey's current state are genuinely unpredictable. Seating, menu, entertainment. Guest lists reviewed again and again. Every detail triple-checked. The wedding happens. You're managing a catering coordination issue when the noise from the feast changes. By the time you reach the hall, Joffrey Baratheon is on the floor, face purple, unable to breathe, dying in front of 500 witnesses in the most politically complicated room in the known world. You watch it happen with the strange calm of someone whose entire nervous system has exhausted its capacity for shock. Then you do the only thing a steward knows how to do in a crisis. You start managing consequences. Clear servants who don't need to witness this. Secure exits before panic becomes stampede. Send a runner for the Grand Maester. Create a record of who was where and when, accurate enough to survive scrutiny, and positioned carefully enough to keep your name on the administrative side of events rather than the political side. You work 3 hours without stopping, while kings die and queens scream and accusations fly through the hall. Then you sit in an empty corridor and understand that the most dangerous political moment in recent memory happened on your watch. In a room you helped arrange, at an event you helped plan. You think about leaving. Then you think about where you'd go. You stand up. Straighten your clothes, pick up your ledger. The new king will need a steward. The Red Keep will need managing. Somewhere a raven needs sending, and a supply inventory needs updating, and a dozen servants need their duties assigned by someone who understands that institutions outlast individuals. You walk back toward the administrative office. In Westeros, stewards outlast kings. That's not comfort exactly, but it's the only advantage your position has ever offered, and you've learned to work with what you have.